VoxWave now features a streaming radio media player on our website's front page, where local artists can get their music played 24/7. For more information on getting your music in rotation or to perform live at our studio, contact Reg Gaskins at 240-832-4455.
Android users, the VoxWave app is now available in the Google Play Store. Download the app today on your Android device to listen in and view programs.
Business owners looking for a place to advertise your business and promote your products and services? VoxWave is the right place. We have over 10,000 views a day and 70,000 listeners a month. For more information, contact Reg Gaskins at 240-832-4455.
The world's #1 streaming music station, VoxWave.com.
We have your favorite shows on VoxWave.com. Check out our lineup. The Kim Show, Mondays, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. In the End We Win with Curtis, Mondays, 8:15 p.m. to 9:15 p.m. Cooking with Flavors with your host, Chef Flavors, Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Slick Daddy Rick, Heartbeat Congo Hour, Tuesday, 8 to 10 p.m. Impact the World Radio TV Show with Cheryl Woods, Wednesday, 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. The Digital Digest with your host, Digital Ace, Wednesdays, 3 to 5 p.m. Live Set Wednesdays with your host, Frank Dent, Wednesdays, 8 to 9 p.m. The BGKH Show with your hosts, Dominion and Epic, Wednesdays, 9:15 to 10:15 p.m. You, Math, and Me with George Randall, Thursdays, 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Then, on Thursdays at 5:30 p.m., The Prayer, Praise, and Deliverance with Elder Thurman Gorman Jr., The 640 Evening Show, Thursdays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., The Peace in the Morning Show with your host, Darius A. Stanton, co-host, Delicate Daryl Barnes, and Queen Ayakidobi, Fridays, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. The Hall Street Journal with your host, Robert Hall, and co-host Clarence Sanders, Fridays, 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Frank, The Success Principles, Friday, 12 noon to 1 p.m. Chanel's 3 Cents, Friday, 1:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. The Daryl Allen Harrison II Crime Victims Foundation Show, hosted by Daryl Harrison II, every Friday from 3 to 4:30 p.m. The Rush Hour with DJ Drew and Janique, every Friday from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Different Minds Show, hosted by DJ Bam 640 and DJ Andre Michael, and your co-host, MC Fran, every Friday, 9:15 p.m. to 11:15 p.m. The Healer Blues Show, with host Ron Jackson, every Saturday, 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. Hour of Power, with your host, Reverend Winters Rogers, every Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. And again, The Prayer, Praise, and Deliverance with Elder Thurman Gorman Jr., Saturday, 11 p.m. to 12 p.m. And don't forget Four Sisters Live Talk, Saturday at 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. Turning dreams into reality talk show with your host, Tashika L. Green, every second Saturday, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Walk in Newness 24/7 with Missionary Antoinette, Saturdays, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. News, ULM, news and analysis, information, sports, and black history with your news anchor, Roderick Carter Willis, 4:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Step your game up with the Youth Project, hosted by DJ Main and DJ Low Hefe, Saturday, 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And don't miss The To Go Show with Kim Brown, Saturdays 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. I Am Dr. Sharon Show, each Sunday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., featuring The Grind, Entrepreneur Network Spotlight, and Write the Book Now. The Riri Williams Show, Fashion and Style Hour, every first Sunday from 3 to 4 p.m. Real Talk 101, Sundays 6 to 8 p.m. And every third Sunday from 3 to 4 p.m., the Third Sunday Tea Talk Show with Dr. Akita Pearson. Gospel Live TV Show with host Gloria Mello, each Sunday from 8:15 p.m. to 9:15 p.m. Listen to all your favorite shows on VoxWave.com.
VoxWave.com.
VoxWave.com, streaming your favorite jazz, blues, and R&B 24/7.
It's a family affair. It's a family affair. It's a family affair.
One child grows up to be somebody that just loves to learn, and another child grows up to be somebody you just love to burn. Mom loves the both of them. You see, it's in the blood. Both kids are good to mom. Blood's thicker than the mud. It's a family affair.
It's a family affair.
It's a family affair.
It's a family affair.
What of it? Still checking each other out. Hey, nobody wants to blow. Nobody wants to be left out. You can't leave cause your heart is there. But you can't stay cause you've been somewhere else. You can't cry cause you look broke down. But you're crying anyway cause you're all broke down. It's a family affair.
It's a family affair.
It's a family affair. Yeah, a family affair.
It's a family
heaven bound, yeah. Oh, I simply must confess I'm glad to be a girl. It's got to be an angel 'cause I put heaven in my world. Shadow is my tropic sun, it's summer all year long. Pleasant is my paradise, how could anything go wrong? Now I'm absolutely sure that's all I've been living for, yeah. Should have turned my world around. Heaven bound, every time I'm near you, my heart just won't keep still. Closer that I get to you, better it's gonna feel. I don't have to dream no more. No, all I'm living for, yeah. Should have turned my world around. Heaven bound.
Good afternoon. I'm Rod Willis with News ULM. We have as our co-host.
Dale McGeehan.
Now, you can't be a person faint of heart. When you come on this show, you have to have some cred, some credentials. And one thing I like about Dale, he's a realtor in the DMV, Services, Maryland, the district, and Virginia. And one thing that is lacking in the world of real estate and business as a rule is customer service and integrity. Dale is a realtor with Wycott Real Estate. His office is up on Wisconsin Avenue. Briefly tell us the type of real estate that you're involved with. We got a couple of videos, then we're going to come back and have a discussion about first-time home ownership and whether real estate in this market is a good thing.
Yeah, well, mostly I'm involved in, I help a lot of first-time home buyers, and I also help investors who are looking for like buy and hold properties or even some multi-units. And just, price ranges, I've got something under contract for like $25,000 in Baltimore all the way up to $700,000 multi-unit in Washington, D.C. So it just runs the gamut.
Are there still deals that you can get in Baltimore for $10, $15, $20, $30,000?
There are, but there are a lot of other people chasing them too. So you're going to have some fierce competition.
And one of the things that we see a lot of infomercials on TV. You can go to a seminar, pay $500, and in 1 month you can make $1 trillion in real estate.
Yeah, it's easy.
How true is that? Because I've often been wondering about that. Is there any truth to that, or?
No, I don't. Well, not in this market.
Okay.
Things have. After the crash in like 2008, you could find some deals on the multiple listing service that were good candidates for flips, but not anymore. The banks have gotten smarter, and they're actually going in now sometimes with foreclosures. They're actually fixing the properties up a little bit.
The banks themselves?
The banks themselves. Sometimes they put a new coat of paint on them. They put some carpet on them. I've seen a foreclosure in a condo in Bethesda that looks almost brand new kitchen, and then they price it fairly close to market value.
Okay.
And so I think but that's more closer into the D.C. market in general. But in Baltimore, you can still find some foreclosures. There's just a lot more properties available in Baltimore.
Give us your address, your email, if people are looking for a first-time home to purchase, or if they're looking for investment properties, who would they call and what would that number be?
My direct number is 240-481-0991. My email address is dmcgeehon@Weichert. It's WEICHERT.com.
Okay, why would this be a good time for a young couple, let's say 32, 33 years old, been married 3 years, no kids, but thinking about some kids in the next couple of years? Why would this be a good time for a young person in America, and especially in the DMV, to think about purchasing a home?
I think you've got to start sometime. I mean, one of the most common things I think people say is, I wish I'd gotten into it earlier. And so I think the market's going to continue fairly strong in the DMV for another 6 or 7 years, I would guess. And then that we might have another correction. Hopefully it won't be as bad as the one in 2006 to 2008.
Boy, that was a beast.
You know, if you can get in just about anywhere, prices I think are generally on the move up. You'll be able to build up some equity over that time, and you know, I think it's you still get some tax breaks, so I think it's still a good deal.
What's your rule of thumb in terms of income? If you got two people in a family, let's say they got government jobs, GS-11, I don't know what that is, this at this time, but you got two people working, been in the job market about 5 or 6 years. How much should they expect to put down on a property, especially if the person is VA or if they're trying to go FHA? What's the minimum amount that they need to put down?
A VA loan, you can actually get money in your pocket
really?
To buy a property.
How would give me a scenario?
Well,
where that would happen?
VA loans are generally at 100% financing.
Okay.
And then you can ask the seller to provide the closing help. So you know, there's always a cost for the buyer and the seller to have you know, a closing cost. So with a VA loan, they normally do 100% financing, and then if you ask the seller to cover your closing help, and if that covers a little bit more,
okay,
then you could actually, you know. But the problem, you know, the downside to that is that you know, it's a seller's market, and so
when you say that, what does that exactly mean, as opposed to a buyer's market?
A seller's market means there are more buyers looking for houses than there are sellers selling houses.
Does that tend to push the prices up?
That's one of the reasons why prices have been going up lately. There's just not that much inventory. And
how long does a house usually stay on the market before it sells or pops?
If it looks good, it shows well, and it's priced fairly, it's usually under contract in a matter of days.
Really?
Yeah.
In the DMV?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But you know, there's still properties out there that are sitting for 2 or 3 months, and that's because there's something seriously wrong with them, or the sellers are just asking way too much.
Is that usually a barometer of that something is overpriced?
Yep.
Or, you know, he thinks he's got the Taj Mahal and really he's got something from someplace else?
Yeah, I mean, I could give you an example of, I think some sellers just say, well, in a rising market, let's just see if we can put, you know, a property on the market that's, I don't know, 20% more than market value, just kind of see what happens. Or I'm not in a big hurry, and the house will just sit there. I mean, buyers are, you know, I wouldn't say they're desperate. I mean, but they're moving pretty fast. You have to be very prepared, but they're not stupid. You know, they're not going to pay more than what the house is really worth.
Question: if you purchase a house in January 2018, what can you realistically expect that house to appraise? Let's say a $200,000 house, let's say $300,000 house. You purchase it in January 2018. What can you realistically expect with inflation and appreciation that house to be worth January 1st of 2019 in today's market?
Well, the short answer to that is it depends. I guess, I mean, as a whole, the market is very strong for sellers. Housing appreciation is going up. But if you drill down a little bit into some of the smaller market, I mean, like in D.C., for example, the prices in D.C. are just going on a 40, just
man.
a really a very
it's like
strong
a straight
trend.
vector up.
Yeah, I don't know how much longer that can keep going though. But Montgomery County, for example, as a whole, was fairly flat for like 3 years, and then in the last year it just shot up like 10% on average. Now this, I mean, we're looking at averages now. So, and I would think there are areas of Prince George's County that are probably doing better than that. Prices are rising in Baltimore too.
Okay, we're going to open up the lines. If you have questions on real estate or first-time home ownership or investment, call 240-710. I'm sorry, 719. I stand corrected. 2560. I got my peepers on. And if you got a question on real estate, this is a man that I recommend. I've done business with him for the past 7 years, a man of integrity. His word is his bond, and he's going to show you what's happened. You don't have any surprises at the settlement table or underneath the house. We have a couple of videos that we have coming up that give some basic information, and after that we'll be back to a segment on real estate.
Paying off your mortgage before you retire may work well and even be an optimal choice for some that are approaching retirement or those recently retired, but it's far from a blanket endorsement. And here's why. Mortgage debt is low cost, often tax-deductible debt. This is not 1981 when you had a mortgage with a 16% interest rate. Your net cost may be close to zero on an after-tax, after-inflation basis. Many people retiring already have much of their wealth tied up in the home. You may not have $300,000 in your 401k, but if you've lived in your home for 15 or 20 years, you may have $300,000 or something close to that in home equity. Why concentrate more of your wealth there? Remember this. Money in the bank or in your retirement account will pay the bills. Home equity will not. If you're concerned about the strain on your budget of those mortgage payments and thinking you may breathe easier once it's paid off, consider a reverse mortgage. This preserves your financial assets in tax-advantaged retirement accounts and still accomplishes the goal of eliminating the monthly mortgage payment. The position you don't want to be in is house rich, cash poor. Being mortgage-free doesn't mean living free, and you want to make sure you have a sufficient nest egg to pay the bills, with or without a mortgage.
You've dreamed of owning your own home, a place you can make totally yours, inside and out. Paint it, decorate it, have pets, a yard for the kids. Think your dream of owning a home can't come true? Think again. If you can afford to rent, you may be able to afford a house payment. You don't need a large down payment. You can buy your home with as little as 3.5% down, and your city or state may offer assistance with your down payment. Don't have the skills to do repairs or remodeling? There are affordable loans for that too. Think you're too young to own your own home or too old? Come on, if you dream it, you can do it. And we're here to help. There's a HUD-certified housing counselor with answers to all your questions. To find a HUD-certified housing counseling agency near you, go to HUD.gov or call 800-569-4287. Come home to your very own home. Dare to own the dream.
Yeah, he's cool till the segment is over.
There's been this pervasive myth in recent years that millennials aren't interested in buying homes, and there's been a lot of gnashing of teeth in the real estate community over this. But it just isn't true. When it comes to where to park your money for periods longer than 10 years, millennials age 26 and up have the same preference for real estate as anyone else up to age 70. And having had a front row seat to the financial crisis, millennials have a greater inclination toward savings and a greater aversion toward debt than previous generations. Early in your career, you need mobility. Many millennials are rightfully choosing the flexibility of renting, having roommates, or living at home with their parents. there's no rush to buy a house. Student loan debt is often cited as a culprit, that it keeps millennials from buying homes. Again, I'm going to take the long view on this. That college education is what's going to give them the higher level of lifetime earnings that is conducive to home ownership. Many of the millennials that are reluctant to buy today will eventually want a place of their own. And by virtue of having invested in career, education, and financial stability, when they buy, they'll buy bigger. The oldest millennials are in their mid-30s. So there's a wave of home buyers starting now that will continue over the next 20 years.
Good time, age for somebody to start considering purchasing a house. Guy's gone to college, stayed in his mama's basement for 18 years, pushing 35, 36, 37. When is a good time for young folk, or a young couple at least, to start thinking about purchasing a house?
The sooner the better, is the short answer. I think if you sit and wait, then you're losing out on the appreciation of homes. So, and then the other thing going on, the other news in the market right now is that interest rates are starting to go up. And I think that's driving the market as well. There's, buyers are trying to get in more now before it goes up more. It used to, for years it was like 3.5%. Now it's generally 4.5%. And then I think they're saying like it'll be 5.5% by the end of this year.
What can a 0.5% mean on a $100,000 mortgage or $200,000 mortgage?
It might mean I don't know the math off the top of my head, but it could be the difference between, say, $150, $200, $300 a month.
Really?
Yeah.
In a single payment?
Yeah, in a single payment, depending on the cost of the house, of course. But it's gonna, as interest rates go up, it's gonna reduce buyers' purchasing power. So in other words, they might be able to buy a house, a $400,000 house today, but then by the end of the year, they might have to go down to like $375.
And some people say, well, I'm gonna wait for the interest rates to go down. Yeah, the interest rates may go down, but the price of the house may go up. The question that I asked you about, you buy a house beginning of January 1st, 2018, and a $300,000 house might be going for $327,000 at the end of the year in the same subdivision, same development. So you have to be cautious of that. What are some of the hidden costs of purchasing real estate? What should young folk or not so young folk look for in terms of costs that they're going to have to pay? And what are the things that they should really be looking for?
There's always going to be closing costs, which there's a lot of different numbers and formulas.
Tell us, what is closing costs? That's a generic term, but it means different things to different people. What exactly does a closing cost entail?
The closing cost, most of it, the lion's share of a closing cost would be the state transfer tax and then the local transfer and recordation taxes. The government's going to, charge a fee for recording the deed and having the deed transferred to a new owner. Generally, those three taxes are probably going to be around maybe 1.8 to 2% of the purchase price amount. Okay. And then there's other just miscellaneous costs. There's a lender fee sometimes, depending on what kind of lender you have. There's title examination fees. There's
what about title insurance? Is that important?
That's very important.
Why?
I think sometimes title insurance can be almost more important than, say, property insurance.
Why?
Say if you bought a foreclosure, and you just don't really know, especially when lenders, after the crash, they mixed a lot to mortgages
together. They bundled mortgages and sold them 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9 times.
Yeah. You never really know if who owned the house at a certain period of time. What title insurance would do would wipe out or keep the current owner from having to pay any kind of liens that might show up later or a claim to the title. that someone says they might have from, say, hey, I owned this property 5 years ago, and you shouldn't have, it shouldn't have gone to foreclosure, and I want the house back. And so title insurance would, keep you from having to lose the house, or at least pay for that expense.
Well, does the house, would the house inure or go back to the original owner, or would you keep the house, or would it basically shield you from the litigation costs? What would the insurance on that title, on that property be?
Well, I guess depending on the case, I mean, if that buyer really did claim to have title, I guess that would be for what the courts to decide, but at least it would cover your legal expenses.
Listen, I want you to give folks, again, your name of your company, how they can get in touch with you by way of email and telephone.
Yeah, Dale McGeehan, Weichert Realtors. My office is in Bethesda, but I'm licensed in Maryland and in D.C., and my phone number is 240-481-0991, and my email address, again, is dmcgeehon@Weichert, WEICHERT.com.
Hypothetical. I got a house that's valued at $250,000. It's been neglected. I got $5,000 in my pocket. What should I spend that $5,000 on to get that house ready? And there are other houses in the community that go for $325,000, $350,000. What's the best bang for the buck for that $5,000 I got in my pocket? What should I put? Should it be paint? Should it be landscape, bathroom, swimming pool, or what?
Yeah, my initial thought on that would be, a lot of people decide on a house like when they first walk in, and so I would think that a new, have a new paint in there to make it look really nice. Maybe put in new carpet. Maybe shine up the hardwood floors. A lot of bathrooms and kitchens need to be updated just about in any house, but I would think new paint, carpet, or shined up hardwood floors would be something that would just really make the house stand out, if that's your budget, if you only have $5,000.
Okay, house is 40, 50 years old. What concern should you have concerning the electrical system, whether it needs a heavy up, or the lifespan of average electrical system is about 50 years. What kind of problems might arise from an older electrical system that hasn't had a heavy up in, well, let's say since you first got the house?
Yeah, I would think it might need to be completely rewired. I think sometimes the electric panel might just have fuses in them as opposed to like circuit breakers.
Right.
So I would think a 50-year-old house would probably need to have a completely new. A heavy up would be taking it from, say, 100 amps to maybe 200 amps, which would cover most houses today.
And the new appliances and whatnot.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something. Roofs. A lot of people get in houses, 6 months later, storm comes, drip, drip, drip. Is a new roof or patch roof a good investment if you're selling the house, or is it a good investment if you buy the house and you want to do some preventive maintenance?
I would think that would be a pretty smart move. I mean, because we really have to watch out for water. You never can tell. Usually a new roof would keep water from going behind the walls. Maybe probably go down into the basement and pool up, and then there might be mold issues later. So a good roof would prevent all that from happening.
This is not 1950s, not 1960s, 1970. Can two brothers, and I mean two biological brothers, purchase a house together?
Sure.
Can two women that are not married purchase a house together?
Sure.
Okay, because there was a time that you could not buy a house unless you were married.
What was it? Yeah, women couldn't have a credit card.
2 years ago.
1975.
Or you couldn't buy a car unless a woman tried to buy a car, and the salesman would say, did you get permission from your husband to buy the car?
Right.
So there's certain things that cannot be tolerated, cannot be asked in the new millennium, and so any person can buy a car, and any combination of people, no matter what their lifestyle or living arrangements, can come together for purposes of purchasing a house. Is that fairly fair?
Yeah, as long as they agree to be on title together, and someone has to qualify for the mortgage, and so they could, as long as a lender approves them both, I don't see why there'd be a problem.
Housing inspections. How important is it, a housing inspection for the purchaser of a house? And do you recommend, if you're representing the buyer, do you recommend that they have an independent inspection of the property?
If they are sort of first-time home buyers, I'd say definitely. If they aren't really handy themselves, if they aren't, they don't really know what things are. What am I looking at here? What does this mean? I definitely have a home inspection. But I have represented, say, investors or people who are going to go in and completely gut a place.
Well, that's sort of a different animal because they're going to.
Yeah, I mean, in a competitive buying situation, maybe not having an inspection contingency would be smart. But for people who are buying a house for the first time or don't really, couldn't go in and say replace an appliance, or wouldn't feel comfortable doing that, then I would definitely have a home inspection for that.
Lead in houses. Houses that were built before, what, 77?
78.
78, I stand corrected. We have a true expert here. Houses built before 78, much of the paint on the walls, and especially around the baseboards, were done with lead paint. Some of those houses, especially in the district, need a certification to say that this house is lead-free, and if it's not, it has to be certified and abated. Is that correct?
I know that in Maryland, the lead disclosure is the seller pretty much says, does the seller know of any kind of lead-based paint hazard in the house? Have there been hazards like that he knows about or she knows about in the past? And just about all the ones I've seen is like, no, I don't know anything about this, and so that's the extent to what the disclosure can be. Now, it doesn't require you to have any kind of test or a swipe or things like that for lead-based paint. Now, in Baltimore, it's a little bit different animal, especially if you're, renting houses. If you're going to rent a house, to get your renter's license, or just have the house licensed to be rented out, you're going to have some certified person to come in and do some lead paint swipes.
Dale, could you give the audience your phone number, address, how they can get in touch with you again? Because I got a couple of more questions before we move on.
The best way to reach me is by phone, 240-481-0991, and the email address is dmcgeechert@weichert.com.
You're a young person in your 30s, 5 years on your job. Is real estate a more sound investment than stocks and bonds, in your opinion?
Yes, and I think I'll give you an example.
Tell me why.
Because, can you go to the bank and say, I'd like to borrow some money to buy some stocks?
No.
Or if you go to the bank and say, I'd like to borrow some money to buy a house. So, I think that's just lets you know how much safer it is. To me, buying stocks is like just buy and pray.
It's a crapshoot.
Yeah, but buying a house, it's you look at the history of from say the 30s or 40s. Housing prices have just been on the rising trend all the time. There's some some crashes along the way, but you do have, plus you have the tax advantages.
And you have something called equity. Could you explain to our audience what equity is? You buy a house for $250,000. 4 years later, it's worth $325,000. What's your equity, and how do you calculate that?
All right. So equity, the definition of equity is the difference between what the house is worth and what you owe. So if the house is worth $300,000 and you owe $275,000, then the equity is $25,000.
And typically, you can either borrow on it. Sometimes people have a 60 or 80% loan-to-value ratio, but that is a cushion that you can use or go to a bank, and each year that you stay in the house, theoretically, the value goes up. And so if you have little ones that 18 years later, looking to go to college or need a small businessman's loan, they can lean on Pop and Mom to finance a venture. Why is equity so important in terms of America and building a capital base?
I'll give you an example of a client of mine. I've helped him buy 2 or 3 places up in Baltimore. He's 30-something, I guess. He's got 2 young children, a baby and a toddler, and he bought a place in Reservoir Hill, and it's like a 5-bedroom place, and he fixed it up a little bit, and he rents out each room to the local art students that go to the local art college.
Maryland Institute Art of something.
I think it's called MICA.
MICA, that's right, the very famous art school.
And so what happened was he put his own sweat equity in it, and then after the tenants had been in there for a little while, the house, now that it was fixed up, it had some equity, and so what he did is he basically borrowed some money to take that equity out, that value out, and then he put it in another place, and then that's a 2-unit place that he's fixing it up now, and so his plan is to keep doing this, and now we're looking at a 3rd property. He's going to keep doing that. So his plan is that when his kids are grown, they will have either college money or they'll have a good little nest egg that he can give them.
So it's really an investment strategy, and the money that you take out, borrowed money, is not taxable money. So unless they've changed the tax law in the last 6 months, if you borrow the money out of your own property, it's not taxable income. So it looks like real estate and real estate investment is still a pretty good buy. Again, could you give the audience your name, telephone number, and tell them, I know you work strange hours, brother, so let them know when they can call.
Yeah, just about any time. Again, the number is 240-481-0991, and my name is Dale McGeehan, and I'm with Weichert Realtors, and the email address is dmcgeehon@Weichert, WEICHERT.com.
We're going to flash something up on the screen, I believe, that shows where he can be reached. And
there's my business card.
Yeah, and that sort of looks like you, too.
Yeah, it wasn't taken that long ago.
Okay. Well, that's good, man. I am hoping that you will become a regular on the show, because we have all sorts of folk that come through here that have resources and are looking for homes to not just live in, but the clientele that we have, they have children, and they're probably looking for a way to send those kids to school. Others, on the other hand, that are above the 50 crowd, they're looking for investments, perhaps to buttress income going into it and making it a part of an investment strategy for pre-retirement. So I'm deeply appreciative. You're welcome to stick around for the rest of the show, because we may have some folk to pop in and have some questions on real estate. Thank you so much,
All right,
Dale.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We're going to have a break that comes in. We got some housing counseling videos that come up. Some people already in houses and are having a little difficulty. That happens to the best of us. We got some more housing videos coming up, and see you on the other side of the break.
When it comes to that roof over your head, probably your biggest expense every month, there are lots of important questions. Should you rent? Should you buy? And what can you afford? What mortgage options are best for you? How do you get your finances and your credit under control and make a workable budget so you can make your mortgage payment and all your other expenses? If you already own that roof over your head but are having a tough time making your payments, how can you avoid foreclosure and keep your home? It can all be so stressful and confusing. You need the right answers from people you can trust. A HUD-approved housing counselor is an experienced, trained professional who can help you make the decisions that are right for you and your unique situation. You don't have to go it alone. To find a HUD-certified housing counseling agency near you, go to HUD.gov or phone 800-569-4287. When it comes to that roof over your head, get answers you can trust from people you can trust and have the home that's right for you. Dare to own the dream.
No matter where you live, disasters can happen. Hurricanes and severe storms bring destructive winds and devastating floods. Wildfires destroy homes and businesses. Earthquakes can cripple entire communities. All disasters have one thing in common. After they happen, people need help. When the president issues a disaster declaration, a massive relief operation is launched. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, takes the lead and works with state and local responders to supply food, water, and shelter to survivors. Depending upon the severity of the disaster, this initial response can last for weeks, even months. At some point, this response gives way to the longer-term process of recovery. Tens of thousands of homes and businesses may need to be rebuilt, and critical infrastructure such as water, sewer, and electric service may need to be restored. The total price tag of recovery can be staggering. Private insurance and government assistance can go a long way to meet these costs, but there is often a tremendous amount of unmet needs that remain. To support long-term recovery, Congress created a program called the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Program. After a disaster, Congress may provide millions, sometimes billions of dollars to this program and directs the Department of Housing and Urban Development to distribute the funds to places with the greatest needs. Once HUD distributes these dollars, planning begins for how to spend them. This phase of recovery requires the input of everybody: state and local governments, engineers, business leaders, and local citizens. These plans can include protecting neighborhoods and families from future storms, moving them from harm's way, and making communities even stronger and more livable than before. While all this planning can sometimes take several months, HUD can speed things up by cutting red tape and offering technical advice. When the recovery plans are complete, the brick-and-mortar work of recovery begins. After a disaster, rebuilding entire communities won't happen overnight. The process can take months, sometimes years. But through it all, HUD remains committed to helping people and places recover, to restoring big cities and small towns alike back to thriving communities.
I hear it all the time. People say, I can't save. There's nothing left over at the end of the month. Rather than waiting until the end of the month and trying to save what's left over, save first. Successful saving is all about the habit. Establish the habit by paying yourself first. Set up a direct deposit from your paycheck into a dedicated savings account. Same goes for your retirement savings. Have your 401k or other workplace retirement plan contribution done via payroll deduction. That way, the savings happens before you roll out of bed on payday morning. What's also true is the more you make, the more you spend. So it's all the more important to establish that habit now. So if you get a pay raise, direct that amount straight into your savings account or your retirement account. Don't let it land in your checking account. By paying yourself first, you're also forcing yourself to live on less than you make. And that's the very essence of building wealth. Start saving now. You can't afford to wait. If you've ever been in the market for life insurance, somebody probably recommended to you that you buy a policy equal to 7 times your annual salary. This is an old adage bandied about by the insurance industry to, you guessed it, sell more insurance. Let me tell you why this is flawed. Life insurance is designed to be income replacement. It's designed to pay the bills when you're no longer around to bring home the bacon. So the correct amount of life insurance factors in the expenses that need covered, the amount of time those expenses need covered, less any existing assets that can be used. Take a two-income couple with kids in high school and college. Their insurance needs are much more finite than, say, the sole breadwinner with a newborn. Who needs more life insurance? Here's a hint, it's not a function of salary. Further, it fails to take into account the possibility of Social Security survivor benefits for your spouse and/or guardian of your children. This is routinely neglected when considering how the bills get paid in your absence, but it greatly reduces the amount of coverage that you'll need. Don't buy life insurance by multiplying 7 or any other number by your salary. Instead, look at the expenses that need covered and the amount of time they need covered, plus things like college or wedding funds. Subtract out what can be covered by your existing financial assets and Social Security survivor benefits. The total you come up with is likely much different than just blindly using a multiple of your salary. While I understand that some people don't trust banks and other financial institutions, I don't understand why. This fear was at its highest during the financial crisis and the years that followed when bank failures were at their peak. But even then, the best place for your money is in the bank, not stuffed in the walls or under the mattress at home. I don't trust my cable TV company, but I'm not going to throw away my TV. As long as you stay within the limits of federal deposit insurance, the bank's failure is the bank's problem, not yours. Nobody has ever lost a cent of federally insured deposit money. Sure, the remote chance of a bank failure or a technology breach may create some temporary inconvenience, but this is nothing compared to what's lost if your house gets robbed, catches fire, or is destroyed in a natural disaster. Other than some emergency cash in the event of a sudden evacuation, don't keep extra cash in your house. The risk is too great. Keep it in a regulated and insured financial institution instead.
What's it all about, Alfie? Is it just for the moment that we live? What's it all about when you sort it out, Alfie? Oh, we meant to take more. Fools are kind, Alfie, then I guess that it's wise to be cruel. And if life belongs only to the strong, Alfie, what will you learn on an there's a heaven above Alfie. I know there's something much more, something even unbelievers can believe in. Can believe it.
Hello, family. I'm Stephen Tillett, retired Air Force chaplain and a pastor for the past 28 years. I want to talk to you for a minute about lies. Some lies are innocent and cause no harm, like tales about tooth fairies and Easter bunnies. But some lies are straight up falsehood. One such lie is the lie about race. There is only one race, family, the human race. But so many things in this country have been organized around this lie that people of similar need and circumstance are intentionally kept at each other's throats, so they never focus their attention on their common enemy, the greed that permeates almost every aspect of American life. That compelled me to write my new book, Stop Falling for the Okie Doke, How the Lie of Race Continues to Undermine Our Country. The weaponized and unscientific concept around skin color has led us to the unfortunate place we're in our country today. A prime example is the Electoral College and the results that it sometimes forces on us, contrary to the expressed will of most voters. It is based entirely around America's original sin of slavery. It is the 18th century's gag gift to the 21st century. We need to stop living this lie, and I wrote my book to expose some truths we all need to be aware of. I'm Stephen Tillett, and I ask you to get your copy of Stop Falling for the Okie Doke today. A few years ago, my daughter gave me Howard Zinn's book, A People's History of the United States, as a birthday gift. It changed my life. It contains so much history that I had never encountered in my education all the way through grad school. How could so much truth be intentionally left out of the propaganda they taught as history in school? And one of the biggest lies we've been told that has damaged our country from the beginning is the lie of race, the non-scientific concept that different ethnic groups are supposedly completely different races. In fact, at the genetic level, the DNA of every human on the planet is 99.9% the same. But that foundational lie has helped to undergird a system that keeps all poor and struggling people at each other's throats while the chief offenders keep getting paid. It's all about greed, and I say no more. Stop Falling for the Okie Doke, How the Lie of Race Continues to Undermine Our Country, shows the connection between poverty, our toxic politics, and the lie of race, and offers some solutions to get us out of this mess. Please buy 2 copies today and share one with a friend.
What? Pastor?
Yes, sir.
Good to see you again, but I'm saddened. This book is powerful and important. We're going to get back to this. But you wear 2 hats. Not only are you the author of this book, but you are the president of the Anne Arundel County chapter of the NAACP. And I got some terrible news all the way out of Chicago about some unfortunate things that are happening with our youth. What happened these past couple of weeks, and what can we do to try to turn the tide of the hatred that is generating with these teenagers and young folk?
Well, the first thing, it's not just the last couple of weeks. There's been sort of a steady drumbeat increasing, and I'll just very quickly run through some of them just so you'll have a sense. Back in April of 2016, at North County High School, an assignment was given in a class for the young people to do an essay that was supposed to be, the word escapes me, it'll come back to me, this happens.
So you're having a senior moment.
Yes, an early senior moment. But what the young man did is he wrote his thesis was how to deal with the minority crime rate. And his idea was that we will take all the brown people in the country except for 3, so that there can still be 3 to sit around and talk to each other, take them over to the Sahara and nuke them. Satire, it was a satirical essay. And so that was what he wrote. He turned it in a week late and got an A. Before he turned it in, he had put it on social media, circulated it, etc. And so, of course, this created a big stir. We had our branch and parents and students met with the superintendent about it. And, of course, the teacher, when she was confronted with it, lawyered up. I need representation. Because my mother, who's a retired teacher, says if you turn something in my class beyond 4 days late, you might as well keep it because it's an F.
An F.
He turned it in a week late, got an A. So then
much less the subject matter.
And much less the subject matter.
Continue.
January 2017, there was a group that was calling themselves the Cool Kids Clan at Arundel High School, KKK, the Cool Kids Clan, and that created a stir. At multiple schools, and later on that month in January 2017, there were swastikas and hate speech in bathrooms and bathrooms and other places in the schools. In May of last year, two 19-year-old men hung a noose at Crofton Middle School. One of them, his attorney and the state's attorney reached out to me and said we would like to have the NAACP supervise his community service hours. Jail was really not an option for this. The way the statute is written, that wasn't really a possibility. People didn't really understand that. We think you should go to jail. First of all, jail is not the solution to everything. And
That's
second,
right. He was a kid.
That wasn't going to happen. You know,
Right.
he was a grown man. He was 19.
Oh, excuse me. Okay.
But
Stand corrected.
the point being that this has been a productive relationship that is built with our branch and this
Well, that's
young
good. So
man.
did the court system or the state prosecutor reach out to the NAACP?
The state's attorney reached out to us,
That's
and
is that
also
novice?
his lawyer.
Is that sort of
This was the first time that
okay?
had happened.
Because usually you all have a edgy, combative relationship sometimes with the police department. That's interesting.
Well, we always say we don't have permanent friends or permanent enemies,
Right,
just
that's right.
permanent interests.
That's right.
And in this instance, the interests aligned. There were some people in the community who were not happy about it, but what I have also done is try to use that as a bargaining chip and say, okay, so we came up with a favorable resolution for this young man, who's a white young man, so the next time that there's some issues with brown kids who've made some mistakes, we want similar consideration.
Okay, that's
and
good.
So where that has been possible,
Has
we've been
that
able to do
ever
that.
has it matured to such a
Yeah,
state
it has. It
that
has.
it has come?
Yeah.
So the chickens
Right.
have come home
there
to
was
roost.
there was a young man that we were able to do that for.
Okay, good. That's smart. That's
Then let's see. In March of 2018, Chesapeake High School. Well, this was this year. Actually, let's go back to February, the same day as the massacre down in Florida.
Parkville.
There was a young man who was in a class, and his teacher actually called him a nigger. But what he did was he leaned in and said something to him quietly, so only the two of them could hear. So basically, then it's he said, he said.
He said, she said.
And
yeah.
so it could not be proven. And then that teacher was retiring 2 weeks later.
Of course.
And then, of course, last May, you'll remember that Lieutenant Collins, Richard Collins, who was over at the University of Maryland, College Park, graduated from Bowie State University, and he got stabbed by a young man who was a graduate of one of Anne Arundel's high schools, Savannah Park High School. So there's just been this procession of bad news related to the system. The reason for it, frankly, children learn what they live. Because think about it, it's 2018.
That's right.
And there's no way that a child born in this millennium, in a new century, should be parroting the things that people talked about as a matter of course 50, 75, 100 years ago.
That's right.
So the only way that they're coming to school with this as teenagers is because they hear it at home.
They hear it at home, and they hear it in the community, and the neighbors have these conversations, and you hear it.
Right.
And so that's where they learn it from. Because I can go back, I was raised in a southern town, Portsmouth, Virginia, segregated, and I was called the N-word so many times, you almost started to begin to think it was your name. You know, they used it so much. But as you fast forward 15, 20 years, the kids coming behind me, as they start integrating the schools and people start getting used to one another, you didn't hear it as much in the open. So it's a learned behavior.
Right.
It's a learned behavior.
Now, I would also note that this particular school, for instance, Chesapeake High School, where there's been now a series, so after the teacher did this and the parents filed a complaint with our branch and, started pushing it up the chain in the school system, we ended up having a press conference. We subsequently had a town hall meeting with the superintendent and some of his senior staff, a couple of board members. And that there's just been a procession, people scrawling things on walls and on doors, and it's interesting. And then sometimes they will make laps around the school or drive around through the community in a truck with a Confederate flag flying.
Wow.
Now,
this is at Chesapeake High School?
This is at Chesapeake High School,
right,
in the Pasadena community, Pasadena, Maryland. Now, the interesting thing is that this school is about 95% white. So I guess they feel safe doing that, because I'm sure they would keep all of this to themselves if they were attending Annapolis High School.
Yeah, which is about, what, 65% black?
I think it's a majority African American, yes. Mm-hmm. And so just, you know, it's easy to talk trash when you 95%. Yeah, you got the numbers, but.
How many high schools are there in the county of Anne Arundel County, including Annapolis proper?
Anne Arundel County, I think somewhere between a dozen and 14, somewhere around a dozen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, are things getting better, Pastor, or what is your hope? And what's the remedy?
Well, the remedy, frankly, is to confront it, because, see, these young people are bringing this from home. And a lot of folks want to blame Donald Trump. Well, the environment just got nastier since 2016. On the one hand, that's true. But on the other hand, the Bible, Jesus talks about it, that you can't, you know, the good person brings the good out of the good stored up in them.
That's right.
The bad person brings bad out of the bad stored up in them.
Right.
So you're not going to have people that all of a sudden calling people nigger just because of Donald Trump. Maybe they feel more free to do it, but it was already in there. So part of it is a matter of education, and that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book. I wrote the book because it, in dealing with the biology of it at the DNA level, people think we are radically different. That you look at somebody with different skin color, and so we're just two different iterations of the human creation, which is nonsense. We are all 99.9% the same.
Race makes up less than 0.1% of what
of
the modern Homo sapien is, and people just scientifically, it's just not true that we are that radically different.
That's correct. And Jane Elliott, the creator of the brown-eyed, blue-eyed exercise, in conversation with some scientists, they've concluded that everybody on the planet is 30th to 50th cousins with everybody else on the planet.
Well, you know.
And since we all have a founder population at 7,000 generations ago that emerged from Africa, and that's where it started. Then people dispersed, and as they dispersed, of course, different climates and whatnot, different gradations of skin color. But at the end of the day, 9 out of every 10 people on the planet, people of the global majority, as Dr. Barbara Lee likes to refer to them, the people of the global majority is 9 out of every 10 people have brown skin. And so 10% are white, and I'm not saying any one is better than the other, but folks need to understand that. You're not any better than anybody else just because of your skin color.
That's right.
And since we're all cousins anyway, we need to stop falling for the okey doke and tripping over this same thing over and over again.
Well, let me ask you something. What pushback, if any, have you gotten from the administration? Are they, I'm just surprised that this happened, or are they just chilled out and here you go again, Pastor, you're just making trouble, or, you know, you always got something to say and you always got a beef? I mean, is it, I mean, because I've heard that Anne Arundel County has a history.
Well, they have a history of, you know, Anne Arundel County. You know, first of all, Maryland is up south. People need to understand that. So they want to, you know, and of course, our credo is that we're the free state, but that is far from our history.
People don't realize that during the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln went to Annapolis and locked up the General Assembly and moved them to Fredericksburg under federal troops because he was afraid that they were going to secede from the Union.
Right.
And so he forced them to
Fredericksburg.
No, not to Fredericksburg. Fredericksburg is Virginia. Frederick, Maryland.
Frederick, Maryland.
And locked them up, and so that they could not take a vote. So, as you say, we are up south. And second to Gettysburg Day, Battle of Antietam was the second largest battle with the largest number of casualties in the Civil War.
Right.
And so
up
they just got rid of the statue of
Roderick
Taney, the guy who rendered the ridiculous decision in Dred Scott. So we do have a history, and Maryland has come a long way, but what do you see as the remedies? Where should we go? And is the training and adjustment, does it have to go beyond the students and go to their families? So, I mean, how do you address this if we're going to live as brothers in this state?
Well, there are a couple of things we need to do. Number one, of course, you have some people, community leaders, and it's interesting that, of course, when the ugliness is rearing its head, now you also have some white parents and community leaders that are saying, ho, 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 they don't speak for me. So they're starting to come out, and so now there'll be some coalition building between pastors, African-American pastors, and hopefully white pastors. But if you remember Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail, one of the things that he spoke to in that historic letter was the silence. He talked about the silence of our friends. So that you have people who were Christian ministers who are supposed to be standing on the same gospel who are basically saying, take your time, you're going too fast, we'll work this out, we don't need you outsiders, that kind of thing, or just being silent. And so I think the election of 2016 has shaken people out of their slumber, because a fair number of the new members of the Anne Arundel County branch NAACP have been white people.
Really? Yes. That's good.
Because they've gotten woke, and it's like, whoa, what happened? And of course, brown people are like, well, know who woke you up, but welcome to my life. And so now there is coming together. We're working together. So that's one thing, the building of partnerships. The second thing will be education as much as possible of the young people. Now, we gave a homework assignment to the superintendent and his staff when they came to the town hall meeting a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things is that you need to, they have a bias-motivated behavior policy, but we're saying you need to establish no tolerance, zero tolerance for people using hate speech, using the N-word. And that if you use it, you're gone for a couple of days or whatever, because any child is concerned about going to college somewhere or maybe trying to get into the military, all of that's going to appear on your record and say, Johnny was suspended 2 days here, 2 days here, 2 days here, 2 days here. So
the cumulative effect of that. Why?
So why you keep getting suspended? And the last thing you're trying to have to tell a college recruiter or a military recruiter is, well, I kept calling people nigger. That's not anything you want to have to say. So that at least enforces the standard, sends the message home. If your child, y'all can sit around and talk about this all day at home, but the moment they cross the door seal to leave the house Monday morning, walk down to the bus stop to get on the bus, we expect them to govern themselves according to our policy, in school, sporting events, after school events, whatever, all the way back home. Now, you get back home, that's the way you want to talk, that's up to you, but it's not acceptable here.
How does what you do with the NAACP coalesce, and how is it consistent with the message that you're trying? This is a great book. I've gone through half of it. I'm going to go through the other half and read it again, and I'm going to get another copy and send it down to my grandson, who's struggling with some things down in Texas. But what's the message of this book, and what would you like black folk and white folk of goodwill to know?
Well, first of all, that the disconnect between people of different skin colors, which this is just 1/64th of an inch. You peel it back. I've been in autopsies. It's all the same.
How about that? You get out shot on the field.
There you go.
Everybody's bleeding red. That's right.
That skin color, called race, has been weaponized in order to keep people of similar interests and concerns separated.
Question: who has weaponized it? Because that bears the question.
Moneyed interests. I'll give you an example.
Give me an example of what you're talking about.
1965, the Selma to Montgomery March. At the end of that march, Dr. King is speaking. And what he does is he takes some time to teach some history. And what he talks about is back at the end of the 19th century, and says that the South had the lowest wages in the country. And he said if white folk complained, the people who were called Bourbon interests, the Bourbon Democrats, but basically the money people, railways and other things. These are now, of course, the Republicans, so they just changed hats. They would tell the white folks, well, we'll just fire you and hire former slaves and pay them less. So as a result of that, the Southern wage was kept especially low.
And so they demonized the dark person who was...
Well, no, not yet.
Go ahead.
So then what happened is the populist movement comes into that milieu, and they say, okay, broke white people, broke brown people. Neither of you are responsible for the other being broke. Who's responsible for both of you being broke? That guy over there. And so as a result of that, they began to come together. At which point, then the bourbon interests, the money interests in the South, said, this is going to be a problem. So they began to engineer the placement on the books, new laws that made it illegal for brown people and white people to do anything together, to come together to meet
So
in
they actually
public.
created statutes,
So
they
created
couldn't meet.
statutes, right? And then what they also did was they, in establishing Jim Crow in the South, after which apartheid was later modeled in South Africa, so we exported this nonsense elsewhere, that they then at least helped the poor white folk to feel a little bit better about themselves because, well, you see, we have our own water fountain, and the colors have to use this water fountain, and they can't use this, they can't eat at this
both of y'all
counter.
were broken barefoot.
And both of you are broken barefoot, exactly.
That's the old, well, that's the okie doke, but I call it the George Colley Wallace theory. He would tell white folks down south, I'm not going to do a darn thing for you, but guess what? Every time I hit you in the head one time, I'm going to hit these Negroes over here on the head 5 times. Oh, he's my man. I'm voting for him, and both of you all are broke. So he used the theory, and that was the segregationist battle cry, and it worked. Right. See, that's the thing. To a great extent, it's a version of that is going on now with some of the hate speech that is being coming out against immigrants who are picking all the lettuce and picking all the peas. And my son who lives in...
And some of them are serving in the military. There was one man
Oh.
who served in the military, was, I guess, an illegal immigrant, and he ended up being deported, but I guess they realized that was a bad optic because he had represented our country wearing our uniform in a time of war. He eventually was allowed back and was made a U.S. citizen.
Oh, I went up
but
to
they have been contributing to our country immensely.
I went up to Walter Reed about 5-6 years ago with a guy who was a double amputee in Vietnam. And the saddest thing, Mexican guy had no legs up to his scrotum.
Pelvic region.
Pelvic region. And he said that he was depressed because he couldn't get back on the field to fight with his fellows.
Right.
And I said, so where you come? Where you from? He says, I'm from Mexico. I said, wait a minute, you got injured in Iraq? He said, yeah, I'm waiting for my mother and father to come up here on a plane. I said, you mean New Mexico, right? He said, no, I'm Mexican. He said, the government told me that if I came in and served in the Army, they would accelerate or forgive my being an immigrant.
Right,
I said, I'll be, and he said, it's thousands of people. So really, U.S. in a way has like the French Foreign Legion. They got a whole bunch of people that were not born. I met a brother from Nigeria. Same thing. He had a foot that was amputated. He got out. A bomb went off. He got out and looked at the bomb, and another truck came by and blew him up, and he was about to be deported.
Right.
And I said, well, where are you from? I knew he was black, but not from this country. He said, I'm from Nigeria. I said, well, how'd you... I said, how long have you been a citizen? He said, I'm not.
Right.
He said, they promised me. And I heard that story several times. And I said, wow, this is like a wake-up call.
Yes, it is. It is.
And they're using brown people and other people. And the guy who went crazy on Fort Hood or someplace and shot up the place, he was of Muslim ancestry there. They're using folk to do our dirty work, and then they cast them out as if they're some kind of racial scum. So we got a lot of healing to do. I want you all to... How can people get a copy of this book?
Before we talk, there's one thing I do want to touch on. You asked me about how the system was responding. Typically what they used to do is they would always try to say, this is an isolated incident. That's how they used to deal with it. But at this point, there have been so many isolated incidents that the question I ask is, how many isolated incidents does it take to form a pattern? So they're not even using those two words anymore.
Well, what are they saying now?
Well, they understand that they have a problem, that they're working with community to try and resolve it. And again, just let me just share. How are they
responding to zero tolerance? Do they?
Well, there's supposed to be another meeting about that shortly to discuss some of those things. And let me just give you our list very quickly. The first thing, back in 2004 and 2005 it was signed. The NAACP and other organizations filed a complaint against the school system, saying that with respect to the way the achievement gap and then also the discipline gap. The complaint was filed with the Department of Education, U.S. Department of Education, the Office of Civil Rights. An OCR agreement was established from that memorandum of agreement between the school system and our organizations. They have kind of fallen away from that some. We've told them that they need to get back to those standards. The second thing, that we need accurate, descriptive reports. And a lot of times, you can tell somebody, here's the data, and you just give them a stack.
Goodbye,
and you got to figure it out. And we're saying that everybody doesn't understand data like that, so you need to present reports the way you used to.
Break it down, that's right.
And they did it several years ago before the office that was charged with it got repurposed.
Right.
And we won't get into that, but they need to get back to that. We told them there needs to be a comprehensive plan to address and reduce both the achievement gap and the discipline gap, because right now, African American students are about 21% in the system, and they constitute over 50% of the students getting referrals and suspensions and expulsions.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. Zero tolerance policy for hate speech, and then they have to be more intentional about training the staff, the faculty and staff and administrators, to be more culturally proficient. Now,
what kind of pushback, if any, have you gotten on that issue?
Well,
they say they don't have the money to do it, or?
They have the money to do what they need to do, and clearly this problem is climbing up the ladder at this point, because it's repeating every week. Something's happening somewhere, and so before it gets real ugly, I mean, beyond just scrawling something on a wall or verbal threats, right? That they need to address it, and they need to bring some teaching into the schools. And some of the parents who taught their kids to think this way won't like it, but we're going to, as a school system, they need to say, we're going to control the environment in our schools. This behavior is acceptable. This is not. If you talk this way or get caught scrawling something, you're going home.
If people want to get involved with the Anne Arundel County NAACP, or people of goodwill, corporations want to give or get involved or volunteer, who would they call and what would that number be?
We'll start with the web address first. It's Anne Arundel County NAACP.org. Anne Arundel County NAACP.org, and you'll see an icon there. You can contribute or become a member or whatever. Our branch phone number is 443-883-5151. 443-883-5151. And we're just looking for some people in the community who are as horrified and disgusted by this as we are, to stand up so that we can stand together and compel change.
They say things won't get any better if you just let them be.
Right.
Stop falling for the okie doke. How can they get a copy of this book?
You can go to my publisher, iUniverse, the letter I and the word universe, and you can buy it there. You can get it on Amazon. If you want an electronic copy, Amazon has electronic copies also. You can get it there. Go to our website, which is, if you go to www.stopfallingfortheokiedoke, the word 4. Or is it the number 4? My IT person handles
that. That's okay, I understand.
Try FOR. If that doesn't work, then try the number 4. Stopfallingfortheokiedoke.com, and you could get it at our website also.
Well, thank you so much. This broadcast has been brought to you in part by Wycott Realty. We had an excellent presentation, and hope that we'll have Brother Dale back on the show. And I have given you a standing and an open invitation to give a monthly NAACP update, because I know some of the people. I worked with Miss Alsop before, and she's been a warrior out there, and I'm glad that you're on the scene, because the problems that we've been working with over the past 20 years looks like they haven't subsided, but I think they got a good man on the case. Again, could you give them that number and how they can get in touch with you and the NAACP, Anne Arundel branch of the NAACP.
443-883-5151 or Anne Arundel County, NAACP.org.
This is Rod Willis, your host. Thank you so much for joining this show. This broadcast has been brought to you in part by the Diabetes Awareness Project and its Testimonial. There are 98 million people in this country that have diabetes, and another 70-some million with prediabetes. It's called a silent killer, and because sometimes its symptoms go unnoticed, we have to be vigilant, and I'm trying to do better with my diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is basically insulin resistant, which means that your pancreas makes insulin, but the insulin that comes out of it there's so much sugar around the cells, it cannot absorb the insulin, which unlocks the key to the energy that's created by the insulin. So what we have to do in type 2 diabetes, with exercise and diet, 80% of it is reversible. So we have to do a much better job with looking at our diets and support the research that's going on. I'm Rod Willis, your host. Thank you so much for joining our show, Pastor. We look forward to some better news and keep up the struggle. Until next week, take care.
It's a family affair. It's a family affair. It's a family affair.
One child grows up to be somebody that just loves to learn, and another child grows up to be somebody you just love to burn. Mom loves the both of them. You see, it's in the blood. Both kids are good to mom. Blood's thicker than the mud. It's a family affair.